I think the buck stops with the players. Simon might have a slightly different view to myself, but I always think, and I felt as a player, the buck stops with me. I've got to deliver a performance. And the teams we've been talking about this morning, are you telling me Chelsea haven't got a good squad, Man United haven't got a good squad? They have. They've got good players in their squads, you know, and they should be delivering better than they actually are.
And they're not. It's
Team
as simple as
leadership.
that.
I mean, ironically, I agree and disagree in equal measure with Stuart. Team reflects leadership. Who's the leader? Who's responsible for the culture of the playing environment of a football club? You know, we can talk about the Glazers and you can talk about the ownership. What's Sheikh Mansour's culture? Never to be there. I don't suppose Khaldoon is down the training ground. Guardiola's down there. The culture of football is created by what happens on the training ground and what happens amongst the influential people in the football operation, which is the manager and the players. In the end of the day, it's always the players. The players will get you in a job, get you out of a job. But they are allowed to behave in a certain way. They're allowed to perform in a certain way based upon the strength, character and influence that a manager has. And in this instance, you look at the culture of Manchester United and you wonder why it has gone the way it's gone. Because even Rio Ferdinand, who was trying to be as obtuse as he could without putting himself in a conversation where he had to be accountable for actually alighting upon something and saying something definite, accepted and advanced the notion that the culture isn't right. So who creates that culture? That culture has to be that the expectation and the responsibility of those players, that when they walk out on that pitch, they know what their responsibility is. They know that if they don't track back, there's going to be a problem. If a winger doesn't do what he's supposed to do, and like Danny Murphy regularly alludes to, there doesn't seem to be any consequence for Garnacho not tracking back. Wonder goal, fantastic. Mercurial piece of skill against Everton. But in games where you need to dig in and fight and be able to track your runners, where is the consequence for Rashford not doing it? Where is the consequence for Garnacho? Where is the consequence? And then, of course, then you've got the other side of the argument. When a player does step out of line and gets smacked, you've got the outcome, the sympathy police for Sancho and his behaviour, irrespective of what his behaviour has been previously. So it's a difficult task to manage Manchester United. But so what? So it should be to manage the biggest club in the world, or one of the biggest clubs in the world. That's what separates the wheat from the chaff. That's why Guardiola is the best of the best of the best.
Ten Hag knows what he wants. Of that, there's no doubt. It seems to me it's the players, some of whom can't put it into action or won't put it into action.
I mean, ultimately, in life, most of us know what we want. It's those that can execute it that can get what they want, you know, and that's the difference between those that can and those that can't.
Can Ten Hag?
Well, I've never said he could. I've maintained the view. There is, of course, a school of thought which says you can't keep chopping and changing managers because the culture of the football club needs to be addressed and arrested and the slump put into place. But then you had Mourinho in place, and Mourinho wasn't right at the time. He was living in a hotel. He wasn't getting the memo about where he should be in Manchester United's great opportunity, and yet still he achieved certain things like winning a League Cup and a UEFA Cup and getting them second in the league, and then a tantrum because he couldn't get Maguire, and away he goes. Van Gaal. Okay, he was a difficult, prickly character that the media didn't warm to. So he gets himself out of a job after a year being in there. But you look at this and you say, it's if you believe emphatically, as whoever is steering the ship at Man United, that you can look into the future and you can see that future being something that vaguely resembles what you want your manager to do, then you are duty bound to stick with him. If suddenly that vision becomes distorted, I look at Ten Hag and ask myself the question, what is the purpose of a Manchester United? The purpose of a Manchester United for a layman like me that looks at it through a very binary set of eyes is to win. Right? So who gets you to that position? Is it Ten Hag? And what is it about him that you thought you saw when you walked in through the door? And do you see the same things now? And if you don't see the same things now, then what's the point of treading water just because conventional wisdom and the orthodoxy says, we better stay there because ultimately we need to give him more time. You only give somebody more time and more rope so they can run with the bloody thing, not so they can hang themselves with it.
Will the narrative be changed that much when Ratcliffe is on the scene? Will the narrative for Ten Hag be changed that much?
I've always thought this is a stupid argument run by the football media, not the conventional thinking behind businesses, because he owns 25%. He's not the majority shareholder. But what he will do is he'll bring perhaps a different set of eyes. We've discussed this. The Ineos impression upon sport isn't world-beating. Let's have a look at the Admiral's Cup. Let's have a look at the cycling. Let's have a look at his voyages into motor racing. Let's have a look at his football participation. No doubt the man is a commercial genius that I could serve him a drink as a waiter and probably still be in the wrong room in terms of experience and expertise. But we're talking about that translating into sport and this idea that suddenly he's going to come in with Dave Brailsford. Oh, wonderful. Clive Woodward was an intellectual capital and won a World Cup. He didn't set Southampton on fire, did he? Made a bit of a fool of himself in the football world. It doesn't necessarily translate. But he might give a bit more diligence. He might give a bit more focus. He's not going to be there. He's going to base himself wherever he bases himself.
No,
like
but he'll have influence, obviously.
Well, he'll have 25% influence.
Yeah.
And so with that in mind, atypically in any business, whether it be a football club or any other business, if you're a 25% shareholder, you can have your say, but the majority shareholders will determine the way that the direction of travel goes, because that's how it works in the real world.
Do you think Ten Hag sees out the season?
I don't think, unless Stuart will attest to this, it's really easy to fire managers. It's not difficult. It's much more difficult to fire people that are going to do a better job. Do I see him lasting out the season? Possibly. Most likely. Unless there's an absolute car crash of a sequence of results that determine a different outcome. Do I think that deserves to? Possibly. Do I think he takes them to where they should be wanting to go? No, I never have done. And people laugh about the silly analogy that I gave about a big man, a small man in a big suit. It wasn't about the suit. It was about the look of the guy, the feel of the guy. You get a feel for someone. Sean Dyche walks in a room. You know Sean Dyche has walked in a room. I'm not suggesting Sean Dyche is a Man United manager, but you know when you look at somebody, you go, substance. I never felt that about Ten Hag.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.